I don't really know why, but I really miss back in the day how every other set, it seemed like, had this big ultra rare boss monster that was wildly inconsistent to summon, and when you got it on the field, it probably didn't have that good of an effect, but they were unique and they had style, and even if they weren't very good at tournaments, they were still cool cards to pull. One of my favorites from back in the day was always Spirit of the Pharaoh. I thought this card was so awesome. I mean, it's a pretty bad card. The summoning requirements are terrible. The effect on the board is not that exciting, but this card to me was so awesome back in the day, and I wanted to talk about it in today's episode of Why Nobody Remembers. As always, because this is a Why Nobody Remembers video, please make sure to comment below the last time that you thought about this card, Spirit of the Pharaoh, or if you've never heard about it, let me know that as well. Oh, and of course, if you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe for more Yu-Gi-Oh discussions. Spirit of the Pharaoh and the cards that you would use to summon it were released in Ancient Sanctuary back in 2004, so these cards are pretty old school, and I would not be surprised if a lot of you guys watching today's video have never heard of them because of how old they are. So we have the first sarcophagus, and this is very important. This is how you summon Spirit of the Pharaoh. This is a continuous trap card that says, during each of your opponent's end phases, place one card face up on your side of the field from your hand or deck in this order: the second sarcophagus and the third sarcophagus. If one sarcophagus card is removed from your side of the field, all of them on your side of the field are sent to the graveyard. When you have all three sarcophagus cards on your side of the field, send all sarcophagus cards on your side of the field to the graveyard to special summon one Spirit of the Pharaoh from your hand or deck. This probably reminds you of Destiny board, and for a good reason. It is a continuous trap that places spells on the board during your opponent's end phase to sort of achieve some goal, in this case to summon the Spirit of the Pharaoh, in Destiny board's case to win the duel. Now there are some differences here. Mainly the first sarcophagus triggers 2 turns earlier because you are only placing the second and third sarcophagus instead of 4 letters with Destiny board, but obviously the payoff is not quite the same. With Destiny board, you are winning the duel, which is a pretty big effect, where with the first sarcophagus, you are only summoning one monster. Now perhaps Spirit of the Pharaoh doesn't have to be a game-winning card because you are waiting 2 less turns, and one of the biggest drawbacks of Destiny board is how long it takes to actually win the duel with it. Before we see the Spirit of the Pharaoh, let's take a look at second and third sarcophagus. So just like in the case of Destiny board letters, these cards don't actually do anything. They are simply continuous spells that only exist to be placed on the board with the first sarcophagus. Spirit of the Pharaoh is the big payoff for this deck. Let's take a look at how good or bad this card really is. So Spirit of the Pharaoh is a level 6 light zombie effect monster with 2500 attack and 2000 defense. It says this card cannot be normal summoned or set. This card cannot be special summoned except by the effect of the first sarcophagus. When this card is special summoned, you can special summon up to 4 level 2 or lower zombie type normal monsters from your graveyard. Nowadays, we do actually have more ways to use 4 level 2 or lower zombie type normal monsters. You could use them for synchro summons or rank 2 Xyz summons or link summons or whatever, but back in 2004 there was not a lot that you could actually do with those cards that you summoned. And that's not even mentioning that you do have to summon them from the graveyard, which means you have to get them in there in the first place. That means that in your early turns, you are not only sitting there waiting around for the first sarcophagus to actually summon Spirit of the Pharaoh, but you are also desperately trying to send as many level 2 or lower zombie type normal monsters as you can to your graveyard. Now before this set, we already had several level 2 or lower zombie type normal monsters, but in Ancient Sanctuary they did release 2 more, and at the time these were the ones that had the highest attack points. So you had Pharaoh's Servant and Pharaonic Protector, 2 level 2 zombie monsters with 900 attack and 0 defense. Now, in theory, in the best case scenario, where you are able to not only summon Spirit of the Pharaoh with no issues, but also you are able to revive 4 monsters with 900 attack, you would then have 6,100 damage on the board. That number is not super impressive, and keep in mind that back in 2004, if you were able to pull that off, that would take up all of your monster card zones, which meant that the only way you could really put more damage on the board is if you were able to tribute summon a monster using one of the revived zombies, which maybe in that case you would actually have an OTK, but still it would have been an OTK that took a ridiculous amount of setup. Admittedly, 1 year later, Spirit of the Pharaoh would get a little bit better with the release of Clown Zombie. Clown Zombie is a level 2 dark zombie normal monster with 1350 attack and 0 defense. If you were able to summon Spirit of the Pharaoh and revive 3 copies of Clown Zombie and 1 copy of either of those 2 previous monsters, you would have 7,450 damage, which is better, you know, that is a significant step up, but it's not quite enough for an OTK, even on an open field. And that is a pretty big problem, because that means not only do you have to resolve the sarcophagus cards, not only do you have to put all of these zombies in your graveyard, but also you have to have cards that can deal with whatever your opponent is doing during that time when you are setting up for your big combo. Now keep in mind, back in 2004 and 2005, while Yu-Gi-Oh! Was not nearly as fast as it is today, this was way too slow and honestly way too inconsistent for that time period. If you compare a Spirit of the Pharaoh deck in 2005 to like Goat Control, for example, you are playing so many terrible cards in your Spirit of the Pharaoh deck compared to what the meta was back in the day. So why don't people remember Spirit of the Pharaoh? Every time I make one of these videos in this series, I always see comments that are like, oh, it's pretty obvious why people don't remember them, it's because they're bad. And while that might be true to an extent, there are plenty of terrible cards in this game that people remember, and in some cases that people love. So I don't think that is enough of a reason for a card to not be remembered in modern times. I think the biggest issue with Spirit of the Pharaoh is that it's kind of a less exciting, less iconic version of Destiny board, a card that was released 1 year prior. And that is a pretty big deal, because that means by the time this card was released, people already knew this type of mechanic was not very good, and Destiny board was a pretty iconic card at the time already, so this card really had no chance. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.